I'm joined here by my colleague Heba, and we're going to talk this evening about Banksy. Okay. Sorry, let me just share this. Um, we've done a webinar before on Banksy, but this is a totally new one. So I hope you if you attended our other one, it's on our on our YouTube page. So I encourage you to watch that, hosted by Francesca Tamari, who if you're in the audience, then welcome. But this is a new one we've planned. Um, I let you know that the chat is open, so we'll be asking you some questions, and please respond and give us your thoughts during the webinar. As always, you will receive a certificate of participation and a webinar handout in the next few days. We'll try to send that out tomorrow. If you don't receive it, check your spam, and but if it's not there, email us. I know some of them have been bouncing, so let us know, and I'll get that out to you. That will include all of the important information from the slides here. So we don't share the slides, but the handouts are even better with links and some worksheets and things like that. It also has a link to our YouTube channel and the previous webinar on Banksy. Okay. With that, I'll hand over to Heba, who's going to introduce us to the topic of Banksy.
Hello, hi everyone. So Banksy is a globally famous anonymous British artist, street artist, and also he or she is our political activist. It's believed that they were born around 1974, and they're known for their dark humor art that mocks authority, consumerism, and war. The art appears in unexpected in public spaces, and some of the pieces of art are sold for millions of dollars. His work resonates strongly with teenagers and is an excellent stimulus for language learning because of the visual impact. The art is recognizable. The kids will have seen them online, on social media, maybe in memes, and this makes it familiar for them and makes it ideal for discussion, even with lower level learners. So the themes that he or she use are controversial and engaging. They have topics like protest, consumerism, peace, freedom, and this naturally invites debate and opinion sharing and critical thinking for your higher level students. It's an accessible point of entry to creativity, so students don't need a deep knowledge of art. They can describe it, interpret it, imagine it, and this promotes communication in the classroom. Cross-curricular links, because Banksy is anonymous and carries social messages, they link to literature, politics, ethics, and this creates opportunities for integrated skills, practice, and debates in the classroom.
Yeah, and we're going to look a little later about some debates, so stay tuned for that. Okay. Sorry, Heba, I'll give you the objectives too.
Okay, so the objectives of today's session are that by the end of this session, you'll be able to use Banksy's artwork as a stimulus for speaking and writing activities in your classroom. You'll be able to guide students in expressing opinions, in speculating, in debating social and cultural issues. You'll be able to design creative tasks that encourage learner autonomy and imagination, and you will be able to connect themes of anonymity and artistic identity to broader discussions that build critical thinking and communication skills.
I think I'm going to have to use that word later in the web.
Good luck.
Wish me luck. Let us know in the chat if you've done any lessons on the theme of street art, Banksy in particular, or any others. We've got some ideas, but we'd like to hear some more ideas. So please share them in the chat. Okay. The first idea we have is become the artist. So why not get students to walk in the shoes of the artist by explaining one of his works? I'm going to refer to Banksy as him, even though technically as anonymous. Um, although if you're in the know, you probably know a little bit. I think I know who it is. Okay. Um, anyway, a fun creative activity that can activate lots of interesting vocabulary. Okay, so you could show a Banksy artwork here. I've got the famous one known colloquially. I don't think he really gives names to his works, but known as the flower thrower. Um, you could say something like, imagine this piece just appeared in your city. A journalist wants to interview the mysterious artist behind it, and that artist is you. Okay. So in that way, they can role play. So you can have one student who's the journalist, the other is Banksy or whatever artist you choose. Again, we're using Banksy, but these could equally be applied to other artists, other street artists, or artists, let's say fine artists as well, if we can really make that distinction. The journalist asks questions about the artwork, and the artist invents answers, explaining the meaning, feelings, or message behind it. And again, probably be worth getting them to look into this, to think about it first. So it's not, they don't have to get presented this on the spot. They can maybe even have some discussion beforehand. So some questions could be things like, why did you choose this image? What message are you trying to send? I mean, this doesn't always work with all street art, but with Banksy in particular, there's very commonly some sort of juxtaposition here, I guess generally throwing a rock or a Molotov cocktail, maybe you might expect, but replaced by flowers here. These sort of things, I think, in Banksy, one of the things that's great to use Banksy is they usually have a pretty, how can I say, easy to understand meaning behind them, intended meaning. Okay. Why here? Not in a museum. Why on a wall? Why in public? Again, a question you could pose for any street artist. And do you consider this art or protest or a mixture of the two? These sort of things. Okay. Um, Here's some vocabulary that you could use. So this is again in the handout. You could share this vocabulary with the students. They could even have the journalist could have one sheet with the journalist things. The student, the artist could have the other.
Sorry to
So
interrupt you, but Lisa in the chat is saying she covered Banksy in a lesson on human rights. That sounds awesome.
good. Yeah, yeah. We're going to look a little bit about that sort of topic because I mean, as I think you mentioned, Heather, that very politically active and uh, protesting war. I mean, I can only imagine what's going to come up on the walls of Britain soon. Okay. So asking about the meaning could be things like, what does this symbolize? Why did you choose this image? Why did you choose this setting? What inspired this piece? You challenge the artist, which is always a nice way to sort of put someone on the spot. Okay, having to defend themselves. Okay, so some people call this vandalism. What would you say to them? Do you think everyone will understand your message? Is this art or is it protest? You could explore the identity. Why do you hide your identity? Do you think anonymity makes your art stronger? Okay. And on the other side, the person playing Banksy or the artist describing the artwork could be, saying that the image shows, represents, symbolizes something. We've left these ones a little bit to be completed, a bit more like scaffolding, because obviously this is the creativity of the student who's playing Banksy. Maybe they have more room. Okay. That's not to say that it's easy on the journalist, because I would imagine what you'd want to do is maybe have another image that isn't the flower thrower and then swap the roles. Okay. It's always a great idea when you have these sort of role plays, particularly where they play two different roles, is to swap them and now say, do it the other way around. Okay. And give them a little bit of different material. Obviously, some of these questions, why do you hide your identity, might be the same for, or the same idea behind them. But obviously, the students can express them in different ways. Anyway, sorry, going on. Um, the object, the figure means or could mean, it reflects, it stands for. Explaining your intention, you could use these sort of, I wanted to make people think about. My message is that the idea behind this is I'm trying to criticize, highlight, celebrate. Okay. Again, a lot of artists are often very reluctant to give these explanations of their art, but in a role play you can do this. Okay. Speculating and giving alternative views too. I mean, they can contrast what other people think, what they want to say. So some people might see it as, okay, vandalism, but I see it as art or criticism. Okay. It could also suggest perhaps the meaning depends on who's looking at it. So again, maybe one of the students wants to play a bit more of the artist who doesn't want to give away the meaning, wants it to put in the hands. Maybe often artists, when they're given these questions, they might throw them back at the interviewer as well, the journalist. Okay. And then talking about anonymity, I prefer to stay anonymous. I did it. Okay. Because what matters is the art, not the artist. If people knew my identity, the message would change. These sort of things. Again, you could add more, or for high level students, you might even let them go in without the structure, without the scaffolding. Okay.
Mhm. In the chat, Francesca is asking, which year would you address this level class?
To be honest, I would say I don't know what it depends. The years, it depends, but I think you could probably get by even with A2 level students. Probably a bit B1 level students could do it maybe a bit better. So maybe I would say that sort of thing is probably best for the high school, the upper secondary school, as in Italian liceo. Um, but again, it really depends on the students themselves. I think this one, sorry.
I think it also depends on how you use it. So it could be used to create powerful debate in C1 and C2 students, like kids who are a bit more advanced. And it could be used to analyze like on a much simpler level for students who are still a bit weak with English.
I think this is true, and I think, to be honest, a lot of the activities we try to do can be done at multiple levels. I think what really depends on is how much scaffolding you give the students. Okay,
Mhm.
lower level students, you may even let them write down the interview first. Okay, they could, you might want to just actually concentrate a bit more on the pronunciation, the actual speaking part of it. Who
Mhm.
knows? You could maybe even get them to do it for homework. Who cares if they use AI or something like that? Okay.
Mhm.
Um, Moving up, give them that sort of scaffolding that we had there. Okay, let me go back. Okay, this sort of thing. And maybe they can continue on from there. Higher levels, no scaffolding, maybe even no preparation. Okay. So you could spring it on them for sort of B1, B2, C1 students if you have them. Okay. So I think I would say ideally as we presented it, it's probably going to be a bit more higher A2, at least B1. Okay. But as I said, you could bring it up or bring it down according to your students. Okay.
Agree.
Um, this one is quite interesting too. Again, one of the things that is great about Banksy is that we're not talking about someone who, you if you're doing a lesson in English, they need the English to talk about Banksy, but the actual input doesn't have a lot of writing in it. Okay, usually there's it's art in the sense that it communicates without the actual the words. And so this animation too, I mean, kids will be very familiar, I'm sure, with well, I'm not sure actually anymore, younger people, if they're still familiar with the Simpsons. Maybe I think it hit its peak a long time ago, but anyway, it might be a good idea. Anyway, kids, even if they're not, they're probably somewhat familiar with the figures anyway, even if it's just from merchandising, t-shirts, things like this. Okay. But anyway, you might not know that Banksy actually created a short Simpsons intro parody in 2010. Now, this was a parody, but it was actually shown in The Simpsons. So it's he got asked to do this. It's visually quite striking. If you're of my age and you're very familiar with the original one, then you can see the plays on it. But to be honest, I mean, if you wanted, you could always show one of those ones and then you could adapt it. Okay. So it's visually striking, it's humorous and full of cultural references. Perfect for EFL classes. What you could do is start by getting students guessing about what may feature in the Banksy version. Okay, here's the parts. Again, you could show this, just Google Simpsons intro and or go to YouTube and find it. The usual version starts with Bart and Lisa, the kids leaving school, Bart is writing lines as a punishment on the board, usually some sort of ironic reference in there. And Lisa is leaving band practice. Bart starts skateboarding. Homer is at work. He misplaces a radioactive bar. He works in the nuclear power station. Marge is shopping. She accidentally puts the baby down on the scanner, and the baby gets scanned and put in the bag. There's a couch gag where they arrive home and run to sit on the couch. Usually something is there instead of the couch, or something happens to the couch. Okay. Anyway, if you've got that, and again, you could watch a couple of them. Again, they only take like, I don't know, we'll see, but like the normal ones, I think only take about 15, 20 seconds. Okay, this one's a little longer. See if students could, if they've got some familiar with Banksy, if it's not the first lesson you've done or you're incorporating this with other things, maybe they could predict some elements. I mean, let us know in the chat if you haven't seen it. Let us know what you predict will feature in this. Uh, Obviously, I would say, and again, I've watched it, but there's going to be graffiti, there's going to be some sort of cultural criticism, and there'll be some reference to the common things that are in Banksy. One of them is rats. He has, given that he's street artist, often rats feature in there. Okay, let's have a look and see if what you thought was going to feature actually occurs. So let's have a look at this for a minute or so.
There's no sound, I think.
I mean, it's pretty dark.
It's quite depressing.
But I mean, that's what you get. And the interesting thing is that this did show on The Simpsons, so it's not something that was not authorized. Okay, so it's quite. I give credit to Fox to actually allow this to show when they're sort of criticizing the practices. But you could ask students, what were the elements of cultural criticism? As you can see, the first part of the couch gag, sorry, until the couch gag, is pretty much the intro. There was a little bit about more graffiti and things like that. But apart from that, they're pretty much the straight things. Where it goes with when the music changed, okay, is the thing that is really different. And again, you could say, what are they criticizing? So again, this sort of satire, it could be a good introduction to satire, to cultural criticism. Okay. Again, these are the things that I've identified, but you're free to add your own. Labor exploitations, sweatshops, child labor, animal cruelty. There's pandas, dolphins, and even a unicorn they have there, and corporate greed. And again, they're actually referring to 20th Century Fox, who are the creators of the networks on which the Simpsons is shown. Okay. That could quite easily continue on into a class debate. Okay? So one great debate could be on the theme of is graffiti art or vandalism? And again, this is not the only topic that could be a debate on Banksy. I particularly with the sort of how can I say, the cultural aspects of it, the cultural criticism aspects of him, could be a lot of topics that we could have. So holding a classroom debate can be a really fantastic activity, but you really need to establish some clear rules. Okay. Um, by the way, maybe I mentioned this later in the slide, but we have got a webinar, and there's a direct link to it in the recording to it in the handout on how to hold debates, and we've also talked about it in other webinars as well. So some clear rules, I think, because it might be something students haven't done before, and it can be really good, but it just needs some ground rules. Okay, one speaker at a time, no interruptions. Okay, it's not a debate if it just becomes everyone interrupting. Okay, needing to respect different opinions. So, we're using polite language, we're talking about the topic, not about the speaker. Okay. We stick to that topic. We don't go off on tangents. So if we're talking about art or vandalism, then, we're not too worried maybe about the fact about the cultural criticism, whether you agree with it or not. Okay. Um, you need to use these supporting reasons, examples, evidence. So really relying on things that are not just opinions, but you're giving evidence. Okay, and a time limit. Again, this depends. The higher the level your students are, the better you can do it. But again, giving a lot of structure, giving a lot of scaffolding, giving a lot of vocabulary help, if it's up on the board, if it's in a handout, can really even allow you to do these things with even lower level students, okay, or relatively low level students. So give them a time limit. Okay, so it might be 30 to 60 seconds that they have to speak in. Again, if someone's going very well, maybe you could extend it. Maybe the minimum is 30 seconds or maximum if they feel they want to make the point better. Okay. As I said, provide this language support. So give them this vocabulary. So, in my opinion, I think because personally, I feel that these sort of things are really going to help them. Okay. Agreeing or partly agreeing, I agree with you because that's true. I'd like to add, okay, remember that you might have teams on this debate. So you might not be agreeing with the person on the other side if I'm saying it's art and they're saying it's vandalism. Although the other point is that sometimes you can agree with part of their argument and say, but you've misunderstood this part. Okay. Disagreeing obviously is going to be important. So I'm not sure I agree with you because I see your point, but I think that may be true. However, okay. Asking for clarification, challenging, why do you say that? What evidence do you have for that? Again, not as interruptions, but as something after the person's finished speaking. I'd like to challenge that point. Okay. And then adding examples of evidence. For example, a good debate of this shows that. Okay. Um, some good things with debates can also be that you have questions from the audience at the end. So the two speakers now have to face questions, not just from the other side. And again, to sum up in conclusion, overall, I think class debates can lead quite well into essay writing, which is an important skill that students need particularly for Cambridge exams, for example. Themes of anonymity, said it correctly. Okay. Um, Undeniably, one of the fascinations of Banksy is due to, I'm going to say, his anonymity. Okay. There's been many theories about who this person could be, but nothing is confirmed. Perhaps this could lead to a research program or a class discussion about anonymous artists or writers. Okay. They could maybe brainstorm the pros and cons of anonymity. Obviously, you don't get the fame well, not personally, but you do get the reputation. Okay, yeah, not personally, but your art does. Okay, maybe you get the money, although obviously
How
as
would
a street
they get the
artist.
money? They're anonymous.
Well, I mean, they still like he can still sell his artwork. Okay, if you're a writer, you're still
Mm.
writing. Okay, Um, they could research another anonymous or reclusive artist. So not all of these are anonymous, but some of these are reclusive, and present them to the class. Here's some ideas. Okay, we have the the OG. Okay, Homer, the Greek epic poet, who we don't even know if Homer really existed as a person or was a tradition. Um, One that's quite famous in Italy and also in the English speaking world is Elena Ferrante, okay, who doesn't seem to exist under that name, but maybe, well, they're not sure who this person actually is. Um, Thomas Pynchon, a novelist who's getting on a bit now, but was in this from the 60s to the 80s at his peak. And he's not anonymous, he is reclusive, and there's only pictures of him from when he was in high school, I believe. J.D. Salinger, who died about 10 years ago, maybe 20 years ago, an American short story writer famous for the Catcher in the Rye. And as soon as he became famous, he basically went anonymous or reclusive, let's say, and in fact never wrote anything or never published anything for a long time. Italian street artist Blue. Okay? Obviously, street artists have a very strong motivation to be anonymous since they are effectively breaking the law. Invader, a French street artist, again, these students will probably be maybe a bit more familiar with these. They may even know graffiti artists in their own city if they're living in Rome, if they're living in Milan, if they're living in other big cities. Um, I'm sure there's local street artists that are known by reputation. Okay. Daft Punk, broken up now, but the guys are still alive. Two French electronic music producers who always came out, did their all appearances dressed as robots. Each one surely have their own reasons. Maybe we know, maybe we don't know why they're anonymous or reclusive. You could sort of get students to research why they think they are, what are the theories. And an interesting thing is, would knowing more about them ruin their mystique? Sorry, that's a mistype there. Okay. Why not? I'll hand over to Heba, who can talk about the conclusions.
And just to add another two names that were mentioned in the chat,
Oh, yeah.
Liberato, the Napoleon singer, and Robert Galbraith, who was a pseudonym for J.K. Rowling. Didn't know about that one.
Oh, right. Yeah, I think she wrote a thriller in that. Yeah, exactly. And it got
Under a different name, Robert Galbraith.
in fact, there's quite a few like writers who write under a different name when they write, for example, out of their genre. So I think she
Mhm.
wrote
Did
a
that too.
detective story or something. Okay.
Okay, so in conclusion, Banksy's artwork is visually engaging and it sparks curiosity in our students, making it ideal for teenage EFL learners. Not just the It doesn't just do that. It also is a great topic for debate because it's so controversial, and this gets students engaged and makes them want to talk and want to participate. His pieces encourage discussion, speculation, critical thinking, supporting speaking and writing practice.
I mean, a lot of these sort of things, they're things that students will be challenged about later in their life. If they can do it, they can engage with people in this. And I don't want to bring everything back to exams, but Cambridge exams often ask you sort of to comment on uh, issues, and even if they're not quite as controversial in the Cambridge exams, they often really require the same sort of, let's say, vocabulary structures, things like that.
Mhm. Also, the themes of anonymity and social commentary help students explore identity in society. Activities can easily link to literature, media, ethics, offer cross-curricular opportunities. Someone was mentioning in the chat before that they can use it in the CILL, 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 I think.
Little, yeah.
Yep, there you go. In those lessons. Creative tasks like role plays, captions, and reinterpretations foster learner autonomy and imagination.
I mean, you could incorporate this as Heber said into CLIL if you're doing art, if you're doing history, things like that. They could even do some sort of a obviously on paper or digitally, not on a wall, but they could do their own graffiti talking about a social issue. I mean, just need to look at the news today to imagine what sort of social issues they could talk about. Okay, but I think those sort of things, when we've talked about comics, when we've talked about music, when we've talked about films or TV series, we're always trying to meet students on their familiar ground. And I would imagine things like street art is something that students are going to be a lot more interested in, a lot more familiar with than we are, I imagine.
Definitely.
Anyway, that sort of brings us to the end. So we invite you to give us your suggestions for future webinars. Put them in the chat, or you can always email me at Formazione. You can see the email at the bottom of the screen there. And let us know. We've got some ideas coming up. Thanks a lot for your attention, and thanks, Heber, for presenting this with me. Everyone will receive a certificate of participation and a webinar handout. We hope to send it out tomorrow. If you don't get it by Monday, drop me an email. I've been sending some out that I think got blocked, or I don't know what happened with them. So if you're missing any others from the past, please let me know. Email me and let me know the date that you're missing, and I'll get it to you. And next week, we're going to be talking about using news in the classroom. And again, all of the things that are in the news at the moment can be used just as we're using street art and Banksy to engage the students. So please join us again next week, same place, same time. And I'll see you then. Thanks a lot again to everyone who participated, and thanks a lot to Heber.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.